Welcome to QuickSpeak, the English podcast that helps you sound smarter. Today we're exploring a fascinating idea,
Okay.
the downsides of happiness.
Interesting.
We often think that more happiness is always better.
Right.
But what if that's not entirely true?
That's a great question. You see, while happiness is generally a positive emotion,
Yeah.
research is showing that too much happiness or happiness at the wrong time can actually lead to negative consequences.
Oh,
It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
a paradox. That sounds interesting. Can you explain what you mean?
Of course.
Okay.
A paradox is a situation that seems contradictory, but might actually be true.
Right.
In this case, the paradox is that pursuing happiness too intensely can actually make us less happy.
I see. So it's not that happiness itself is bad,
Right.
but rather that there's a balance to strike.
Exactly.
Kind of like how eating too much cake can make you sick, even though cake is delicious.
That's a perfect analogy. And one area where this balance is particularly important is in our understanding of risk.
What?
When we're feeling extremely happy,
Yeah.
we might not accurately assess potential dangers.
Oh.
For example, a study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology
Okay.
found that people in a very happy mood were more likely to engage in risky behaviors,
Like what?
like overeating or making impulsive decisions.
That's surprising. So happiness can actually make us less cautious.
Yes, precisely.
Wow.
Our brains become a bit less focused on potential threats when we're riding high on happiness. It's almost as if our internal alarm system takes a break. But of course, this doesn't mean that every happy person is going to start making reckless choices.
Right.
There are always other factors at play.
So it's not a simple cause and effect relationship.
Right.
There are nuances to consider.
Exactly.
What about the idea that happier people are safer drivers? I remember reading something about that.
Yes, you bring up an interesting point. There's evidence that happier people might indeed be more cautious in certain situations. For instance, studies show they're more likely to wear seatbelts and follow traffic rules.
Interesting.
It seems that the link between happiness and risk-taking is complex,
Yeah.
and more research is needed to fully understand it.
It seems like happiness can sometimes make us more reckless
Yeah.
and sometimes more careful.
Uh-huh.
What's the takeaway here for our listeners?
I think the key takeaway is that happiness affects us in complex ways. It's not a simple solution to all our problems.
Go.
It's important to be aware of both its benefits and its potential downsides.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned something earlier about a happiness-suicide paradox.
Right.
That sounds pretty intense.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about that?
Of course.
Okay.
This paradox refers to the observation that regions with higher levels of reported happiness sometimes also have higher suicide rates.
Wow.
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does. Why would happier places have more suicides?
Well, one possible explanation is that in a society where most people seem happy, those who are struggling might feel even more isolated and alone.
Oh.
Imagine living in a place where everyone around you seems cheerful and carefree while you're battling inner turmoil.
Yeah.
That contrast can be incredibly painful.
I can see how that would amplify feelings of loneliness and despair.
Exactly.
It's like being the only one not invited to the party.
Yes.
Even if you wouldn't want to go anyway.
Right.
So while it's great to strive for happiness,
Yeah.
we also need to be mindful of those who are struggling
Yes.
and create a space for them to feel supported, even if their emotions don't match the dominant mood.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And this brings us to another potential downside of happiness.
Okay.
The phenomenon of forced optimism, often called toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity. I've heard that term a lot lately.
Yes.
What exactly does it mean?
Toxic positivity is like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It's the insistence on being positive and happy all the time,
Okay.
even when it's inappropriate or dismissive of genuine struggles.
Right.
Imagine telling someone who just lost their job to just think positive or look on the bright side.
That would be incredibly insensitive. Like minimizing their pain and telling them their feelings aren't valid.
Precisely.
Wow.
While optimism can be helpful in many situations,
Yeah.
toxic positivity can actually be harmful. It invalidates negative emotions and pressures people to suppress their true feelings,
Right.
which can lead to a buildup of unaddressed emotional issues.
So it's not about being happy all the time,
Yeah.
but about acknowledging and processing the full range of human emotions,
Yes.
both positive and negative.
We need to allow ourselves and others to experience the full spectrum of human emotions. Bottling up negative feelings doesn't make them disappear.
Okay.
It often just makes them stronger. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can push it down for a while, but eventually it's going to pop back up with even more force.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
So how can we avoid falling into the trap of toxic positivity? How can we learn to embrace a healthier approach to happiness?
It starts with recognizing that negative emotions are not the enemy. They are valuable signals that something needs attention. Sadness, anger, fear.
Yeah.
These emotions can provide important information about our needs and values.
So instead of trying to suppress or ignore negative emotions, we should try to understand what they're telling us.
Exactly.
Oh.
For example, if you're feeling anxious about an upcoming presentation, instead of telling yourself to just calm down, ask yourself, what specifically is making me anxious?
Right.
Is it a lack of preparation? Is it a fear of public speaking?
That makes a lot of sense. Once you identify the root of the anxiety, you can take steps to address it.
Right.
Like if you're feeling unprepared, you need to spend more time rehearsing your presentation.
Precisely.
Okay.
And if it's a fear of public speaking, you could join a public speaking group or seek guidance from a communication coach. The key is to acknowledge the emotion, understand its message, and then take constructive action.
This is really making me think about how I deal with my own emotions. I tend to be pretty optimistic by nature.
Okay.
Which is generally a good thing. But I can see how it could sometimes lead to me brushing aside legitimate concerns.
That's a great insight.
Okay.
It's wonderful to have a positive outlook.
Yeah.
But it's also important to be honest with yourself about the challenges you face. Don't be afraid to acknowledge the tough stuff.
I'm also realizing that I sometimes put pressure on myself to be happy all the time. Like it's some sort of achievement to unlock. And when I inevitably experience negative emotions, it feels like I failed in some way.
That's a very common experience.
Oh.
The happiness trap is the idea that the relentless pursuit of happiness can actually lead to unhappiness. When we set unrealistic expectations for constant bliss, we set ourselves up for disappointment.
So it's like we're on a treadmill.
Yes.
Constantly chasing after this elusive feeling of perfect happiness, but never quite reaching it. And in the process, we miss out on the richness and complexity of the full human experience.
That's a great way to put it. It's like trying to force a flower to bloom before it's ready. True happiness flourishes when we embrace the natural ebb and flow of life.
Okay.
With all its ups and downs.
And this brings us back to the importance of emotional agility, right?
Absolutely.
Being able to navigate the full spectrum of emotions without getting stuck in any one extreme.
Emotional agility is like having a toolbox full of different coping strategies. You learn to recognize and manage different emotions effectively without letting them control you.
Right.
It's about flexibility and resilience in the face of life's inevitable challenges.
So it's not about eliminating negative emotions,
Right.
but about learning to dance with them.
Exactly. It's about learning to move with the music of your emotions, even when the tune is a little melancholic.
I love that. Now, for our listeners who are learning English, how can they apply these insights about happiness and emotional agility to their language learning journey?
That's a fantastic question.
Yeah.
Learning a new language can be an emotional roller coaster.
Right.
There will be moments of exhilaration when you have a breakthrough or successfully navigate a conversation in your target language. But there will also be times of frustration and self-doubt when you hit a plateau or make mistakes.
I can definitely relate to that. I remember when I was first learning English, I felt so discouraged when I couldn't understand native speakers or express myself fluently.
Those feelings are completely normal. It's important to remember that everyone who learns a new language goes through these ups and downs.
Right.
It's part of the process.
So how can English learners apply the principles of emotional agility to those challenging moments? What advice would you give them?
First, remember that negative emotions are not a sign of failure.
Okay.
They are simply indicators that you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, which is essential for growth.
That's reassuring. It's easy to get caught up in self-criticism when you're struggling with a new language.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that making mistakes is part of learning.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Embrace your mistakes as opportunities to learn and grow. And instead of getting overwhelmed by negative emotions, try to reframe them as valuable feedback.
Yep.
Ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? How can I adjust my approach?
So it's about turning those moments of frustration into fuel for improvement. Instead of getting discouraged, Get curious.
Exactly.
Okay.
Curiosity is key.
Yeah.
When you encounter a challenge,
Yeah.
approach it with a sense of wonder and a desire to learn,
Right.
rather than a fear of failure. And remember, be patient with yourself.
Okay.
Language learning is a marathon, not a sprint.
And just like in a marathon, there will be moments when you want to give up. But it's the ability to push through those moments, to acknowledge the difficulty but keep moving forward, that ultimately leads to success.
Well said. And don't be afraid to seek support along the way. Connect with other learners, find a language partner, or seek guidance from a teacher or tutor.
It's amazing how these insights about happiness and emotional agility can be applied to so many different areas of life.
Yeah.
From personal growth to professional success to language learning.
It's a testament to the interconnectedness of our emotional well-being and our ability to thrive in all aspects of life.
And remember, you can always come back to this episode and listen again to solidify the vocabulary and concepts we've discussed today.
That's a great tip. Repetition is key in language learning. The more you expose yourself to new words and phrases, the more likely you are to remember them.
Exactly. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of QuickSpeak and learned some new vocabulary along the way.
If you're looking for more ways to improve your English, be sure to check out the description below for links to vocabulary lists and exercises related to today's episode.
And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more engaging English learning content.
Yes. Until next time, keep learning, keep practicing, and embrace the full spectrum of human emotions, both positive and negative.
Right.
They are all part of what makes us unique and capable of achieving great things.